All right, so welcome tonight. We're going to learn about the acronyms that we use, more specifically, many of them are specific to our state, and the resources that go along with those acronyms. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and of course, I'll be testing what you know as we go. So we're going to start with one child's story. The happiest day of my life was the day that I delivered Anna. I felt contractions and we went to our hospital. I was told that Anna would have her hearing tested because of a law in Illinois requiring UNHS. Hands up, who knows what UNHS is? All right, Kristen.
Universal newborn hearing screening.
Correct. And so this law actually went into effect, I think it was signed end of 99 and went into effect 2000 or 2001, somewhere in there. So when our son was born, it wasn't mandatory, but the hospital that he was born at was already doing it. And so that's how we found out about our son. This was also the day that I would start to become confused and overwhelmed. This is our story. The nurse came in to tell me that Anna had failed her newborn hearing screening. The nurse said something about an OAE and ABR. OAE, what does that mean? All right, that means otoacoustic emissions. So that's the test where they put the little probe in the ear and they measure the waves. It's kind of like the starter of the hearing test. And ABR, who knows what an ABR stands for? Okay, ABR is automated brainstem response, I believe. That is where they put the little patches, the little probes, like on the head and behind the ear, and they test the brain response to sound. I was given an EDDI brochure. Who knows what EDDI means? Okay, Eva.
Is that the Early Hearing Detection Institute?
Very close. Kristen, I saw you also come in to answer. Do you want to finish that off?
Is it intervention?
Yes. Early Hearing Detection and Intervention. So these are the folks. Each state has an EDDI program. They're the ones that follow through with this law. Make sure that the hospitals are screening, that they're handing off the patients in an appropriate manner, and that they're reporting back to the EDDI program in the state the results of the children's testing. Most EDDI programs are housed within their public health, so then public health will follow through with that and send out the letters if that child did not pass that test. So I was given an EDDI brochure with, and they told me that they had to report the failure to IDPH. IDPH, what does that mean? Eva.
Illinois Department of Public Health.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of gave that one away, didn't I? It's all good. Yeah, so Illinois Department of Public Health, like I said, they're the ones following up with those results, sending the letters to the families and so forth. They asked me who my PCP was. PCP, who knows what that is? Melinda.
Yeah, primary care provider or primary care physician.
Correct. So this is typically the doctor that you're going to take your child to see. The issue with this is that many families may not already have that provider chosen for their child, or perhaps they don't use a primary care physician for themselves. They might be using state aid, which maybe then they're going to a clinic for. So the reason why they ask for a PCP after that baby is screened is they want to have somebody else to follow up with. So aside from public health sending a letter to the family, they'll send a letter to that PCP saying, hey, your little boy Jimmy who was just born that comes to see you, he didn't pass his hearing test. So next time they come in for an appointment, will you follow up with them? The bad thing is if they don't have a PCP, then public health doesn't have that backup system to follow up with family. So they asked me who my PCP was, and I told them that at this time I didn't know. They told me to follow up and schedule diagnostics and to call DSCC if I didn't know how to have the cost covered. DSCC, what is that? Melinda.
Division of Specialized Care for Children.
Correct. And do you know what they do?
Well, my daughter, my youngest, had used them some time ago. They help families who have additional costs that might be covered by their regular, if they have, quote, regular insurance, they'll cover hearing aids and specialist appointments, travel, mileage, things like that for families after they apply.
Correct. So that is one of the ways that DSCC helps family. And they're out of the University of Illinois, Chicago. So you might see UIC DSCC. You might see UIC SCC. They, for a while, had talked about dropping the D because people were getting them confused with DCFS. So I don't know really what they're using these days. I still call them DSCC. But as far as helping families, they help a couple different ways. One is care coordination. So regardless of income or anything else, any family with a child who has special needs can get care coordination from them. And essentially what that is if you're looking for a particular provider or specialist or somebody to help you, they will help you locate that professional, ensure that that professional is accustomed to working with children, and works with your insurance plan. They will help set up the appointment, and then after the appointment is done, they will follow up with you to see how it went and if you had any questions. The other bonus to this is that their care coordinators, all of them are medical professionals, whether they are nurses or I'm trying to think of the other medical backgrounds or backgrounds that these professionals have. But the beauty of that is when we go and we talk to this care coordinator and say, they want me to schedule this ABR. I don't know what an ABR is. They know what an ABR is because they have that medical training, that medical background. So it's nice because sometimes it's frustrating for us when we're retelling our story. This is one person we don't have to explain the ins and outs of the tests that they want done. And in my experience, sometimes I've talked to them and they're like, well, what about this test or what about this avenue? They've had additional solutions because of that additional background that they have as a professional. So care coordination is part one. Part two, if the family financially qualifies. So one, the child's medical condition has to be a medical condition that they cover. And then two, the family qualifies financially. So based on the family size and income, there's a magic little number on the tax return. DSCC will, say, yes, you fall within our parameters, or no, you don't. If you do, then they would cover approved appointments and purchases, ear molds and so forth. If it's approved by them, they will cover what insurance does not pay. If the family, I believe, this is their rule, I think if the family files or submits their paperwork with like their tax return, then they cover the family 2 to 3 years without the family having to like re-up and resubmit paperwork. If maybe there has been a change in the family income or, somebody just lost a job or mom's out on maternity leave, and so their income now is not what it was. The family can file by pay stubs or submit their financial stuff by pay stubs. And if that's the case, then families are only covered a year before they have to resubmit the paperwork. And then after that year, it would have to be, I believe, with the tax return. The one thing that I always tell families is if they don't qualify now for DFCC, that to always keep it in the back of their mind, because if there was a situation where maybe one of the parents stopped working or they were laid off, the second that those things happen, I recommend to the families to go and apply. And even after they get approved and maybe a month later something, that situation changes in their family, they're at least covered for a year, and DFCC is not going to revoke that. Okay? So the other thing that I share with families is that magic number off the tax return changes typically every year in the fall when cost of living adjustments and stuff come into play. So if they tried earlier in the year and it doesn't work out, I always recommend to families to try again, or just even give a call. Say, what's the number for family size of 5? And then this way they know. The third way that they help families is they have something called gift funds. So if a family is looking, maybe they want resources to communicate with their child. Maybe they want sign language videos. Maybe they want to attend a conference to learn more about hearing loss. I'm trying to think of what other situations. They have paid for a vibrating alarm clock for our son through these gift funds. And so the family can ask, and again, I don't believe they have to be a family currently, financially supported by DFCC. I think it can be any family. But they would call their local office and see if they can get gift funds to cover this. Again, the gift funds reset every fall, and each office has a different amount within their gift funds from what I understand. The gift funds come from private donations in the community, and so each office might even have different sizes of gift funds, but they have to use them up, but once they're used up, that's it until they get refilled. So again, if a family tries in May and they're told, no, we don't have anything, then again, I suggest trying again in the fall. The last thing that DFCC does, they partner with HVEIO and ISD to put on Parent Institute. And that is a one-week event for the whole family, for families with children ages 5 and younger, with bilateral, I believe, moderate or higher loss. The whole family attends, even siblings ages 8 and younger, and it's absolutely free. And from what I understand, it's a wonderful experience held in Jacksonville, Illinois at ISD. So that is that. After we called UIC, U of C, and Lurie, and Carl if we lived a little further south. So first one, UIC. Eva.
University of Illinois at Chicago.
Correct. Put your hand down. Thank you. U of C. Kristen.
University of Chicago?
Correct. And Lurie, that used to be Children's Memorial. Carl, does anyone know where Carl's housed? Okay, Carl's in the central part of the state. They're in the Bloomington Normal area. And they have not only a hospital there, but they also have a school, an auditory oral school. So let's see, we chose one and had Anna's hearing tested. They told us that she did have a hearing loss. I asked if she was deaf or HOH. What does HOH mean? Kristen.
Hard of hearing.
Correct. I thought maybe we would Q and she would go to AHI. What does AHI stand for? Okay. AHI stands for Alternatives in Education for the Hearing Impaired. It's part of a program out in Oh, now I'm going to blank on the location. I want to say Rolling Meadows, but I don't think that's it. All right, it'll come to me. It is up in the northern suburbs, and it's part of AGBMS, which stands for the Alexander Graham Bell Montessori School. So you might see AGBMS/AHI, AEHI. And it is a Montessori school that has a program with teachers of the deaf and so forth that work with the kids on using cues. Does anyone know what cued speech is? Or does everyone know?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, so they use cued speech at the school, and the school is a mix of hearing and hard of hearing children, or children with a hearing loss, I should say. So that's what that is all about. And if you ever did want to learn cueing, they have, I believe, a workshop once a month. You can go to their website and check that out. And they also have a camp over the summer for the family as well. So I thought she would go to AHI, or we would go to an oral school like CV. What does CV stand for? All right. CV is Child's Voice. They have a location in Wooddale, and they have another location in Chicago. And it's an auditory oral school, pretty much for kids, I would say no older than 7. And the idea at that school is that children use their voices. There's no signing. They have a program. What?
Oh, no, I was just going to say I tried to respond, but I guess it didn't go through properly. But, yes, they go up to first grade, and then that's typically when they mainstream into their home district, according to what we've learned as we've been going there for a couple of months now.
Right. So I believe Chicago location is only early intervention, so 3 and under, whereas the Wooddale location has the early intervention program as well as the P1 and P2 programs, which are their primary 1 and primary 2. My son also went there. He was 8 when he left, so that's why I wasn't sure. I knew that wasn't typically the age that they wanted to go to, and I think they had toned it down after he had left, so that's why I was unsure. All right, so, but maybe we would all learn ASL. ASL, what does ASL stand for? Melinda was first.
American Sign Language.
Very good. And then use a TTY. Probably know what a TTY is, but don't know exactly what the letters stand for. Melinda?
You know, and as I hit the button, you said, and don't know exactly what the initials are. I'm not really sure about the initials, but I know what it is. I know it's a telephone device that uses the phone signal to dialogue in a typing of what the person is saying to or from a deaf or hard of hearing person. Am I close?
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I lost my voice.
Sort of.
I'm not laughing at you. I just had my crick in my voice. It is a teletypewriter. So essentially the idea is that you would make calls to a TTY line, and then there would be somebody on that end that would type the responses back for the other person who had a hearing loss to read, so basically have captioning. But both ends needed to have a TTY line. And then, or a VP in the future. VP, anyone got that one? Eva?
Video phone?
Correct. Do any of you have a video phone?
Yes.
Okay. So if you don't, know that you can get one free if that was something that you were interested in. You can get a free video phone, caption phone, or any of those as long as you, I believe, have a letter that states that your child does have a hearing loss. My mind started wandering, and then the audiologist told me to take it one step at a time. I wanted to know more about CIs, too. What does the CI stand for? Eva?
Cochlear implants.
Correct. She referred me to EI. What's EI? Eva?
Early intervention.
Correct. And the closest CFC? Eva?
Child family connection.
Yes, child and family connections. So that a DSC, this might be a little bit tricky here because they don't refer to themselves this. A DSC is a designated service coordinator. So each CSC office has service coordinators that work with the families to set up the meetings, maintain their IFSP, and so forth. A few years ago, they got the WISE idea, HVEIO, which then was, Hearing and Vision Connections at that time. They had the idea of, well, there should be at least one person in the office, in each CSC office, that understands what hearing loss is, what vision loss is, and understands the resources that are available in the area and can really work with these families. And then that person at each office should be working with all the kids that have hearing and vision loss. Great, got them trained. Some offices had more than one person trained. But as you know, there's much turnover in the CFC offices. And so when a DSC left, it doesn't necessarily mean that a new person was retrained. So that's what a DSC stands for. That's a tongue twister there. So that a DSC could have Anna evaluated, and then she would write an IFSP. Kristen?
Individual family service plans?
Correct. All right. And so an IFSP is for kids 3 and under. It's also referred to as Part C. So if you ever hear about Part C, that's early intervention services. So I met with the DSC, and we decided that a deaf mentor would be a good idea. Just a quick show of hands, how many of you have utilized a deaf mentor? Okay. How many of you knew that there was a deaf mentor service available? All right. Okay. So essentially in early intervention, a deaf mentor is a deaf adult who will work with the family, answer any questions that they might have about living with a hearing loss. If that deaf mentor also has sign experience, and if that's something that the family wants to learn, they can always work with the family on teaching sign language and so forth. But they're really a great resource as far as what it's like to be living with a hearing loss. She also put a DTH on Anna's plan. What is a DTH? All right, Kristen, did you say switch your letter, or do you have a question now?
Yes. Yes, I did. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I went from A to Q. Developmental Therapist for Hearing?
Correct. So I asked, I'll finish off the sentence here and then I'll explain. I asked what the difference between a DT and a DTH, and she told me about HVEIO. So a DT is a developmental therapist, and a DTH is a developmental therapist hearing. And the difference between the two is that the developmental therapist hearing has additional schooling and training that also HVEIO provides, that they specifically know what children with hearing loss are facing. They know about communication options, they know about amplification options, schooling, all that stuff that we, you know, ask and wonder and come across. They also more than likely have signing experience. And so that's why a DTH would be more appropriate for a child with hearing loss than a DT. However, in some parts of the state, a DTH might not be available. And so that family might be working with a DTH. All right, so she told me about HVEIO. Who knows what HVEIO stands for? Okay, so HVEIO used to be HVC, which was Hearing and Vision Connections. Then they switched over to HVEIO, which is Hearing and Vision Early Intervention Outreach. So again, working with early intervention providers and making sure that they have the trainings that they need and supporting both hearing and vision world. She also told me about choices. And does choices stand for anything? Raise your hand, yes or no. Kristen.
I think it doesn't stand for anything. It's just choices for parents, the organization.
Correct. And I don't know why, but when Karen was in the role of choices, there was many projects that she did where she capitalized like the word. And so I joke with her that she was always like screaming with excitement of whatever she was working on. But there is no reason why that's capitalized and for parents is not capitalized, I think just to make it stand out, but it does not stand for anything. And GBYS, please tell me someone knows. Kristen.
I've heard of it before. I think it's Guide by Your Side.
He's a little thinker, yes. And Illinois, or ILH&V, Melinda.
Illinois Hands and Voices.
Correct. It was hard for me to understand the difference, so she asked that I sign a release because of HIPAA. Anyone? You probably know what it means, but you just don't know what the letters stand for. I don't blame you. I'm pulling out my little cheat sheet. Okay. It is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And so this allows us to share information with each other so that she could call the places for me. The choices, if you ever, the way I kind of explain the three organizations is that Choices is really a resource referral kind of organization. We will send families and professionals to the next step. So what they're looking for, we will help them quickly locate that resource. We also provide the Children in Hearing Loss Notebook for free, and then we host American Sign Language classes in spoken Spanish, the READ event, Eddie Day, a couple miscellaneous events like that. GBYS, free one-on-one support from parents of children with hearing loss. And then Illinois Hands and Voices, the sister organization of Guide by Your Side, really focuses on group events and outings and opportunities. During one of our first sessions with our DTH, I had many questions. I asked about ISD. What is ISD? Eva.
Illinois School for the Deaf.
Correct. And then if Anna had any issues down the road, where would she go to school? We talked about IEPs. Melinda?
Illinois Educational Plan. I'm sorry, Individual Educational Plan. Oh, gosh, sorry about that.
That's all right, because, everything in Illinois with an I, right?
I know. That's why I was like, I know what I wanted to say.
Correct. So Individualized Education Plan. And IDEA. IDEA, what's that stand for? Melinda.
I'm going to take a guess. Individual Disability Education Act.
Correct. Nice job.
Yay.
And going back to ISD, does anyone know where ISD is located? Eva.
Jacksonville, Illinois.
Correct. And I want to, even though ISD has the I in there for Illinois, because we use the acronym, I would always say that if you are talking to a parent about them, to make sure that you say that it's Jacksonville, Illinois, only because there's, you know, the first place that I think of when I think of Jacksonville is Florida. And when I was told about Parent Institute, they said, oh, it's in Jacksonville. Well, I didn't go because I thought it was Jacksonville, Florida, and I thought there's no way I'm driving there with my son alone. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Now, they never did say ISD, because then I probably would have asked what ISD was, but they just kept saying Jacksonville. So don't assume, especially for us that live further north, working with families up here, don't assume that they know that there's a Jacksonville in Illinois. I had read something about children and communication and also about behavioral issues in school and at home if a child was acting out. She told me about ISRC. What is ISRC? Eva.
Illinois Service Resource Center.
Correct. I also really like going to the theater, and I wanted Anna to love the theater as well. My DTH told me about ICODA. Anyone know about ICODA? All right. They've recently moved to Rolling Meadows. They were housed in Northbrook for a long, long time. My son participates in them. It's a wonderful organization called International Center on the Deafness and Arts. They have a group within ICODA called THT, which is the Traveling Hands Troupe. And this THT group is basically rented out to travel all over, even internationally, to perform either plays or songs in American Sign Language. So there are hearing children, there are children with hearing loss, there are children that have never used sign and join the group and then they learn the sign for the songs. There are kids with no amplification, there are kids with cochlear implants and hearing aids. There's a little bit of everything within this group. But basically, if the kids want to get together with the other kids, have a good time, and perform, this is a good place for them to be. And I believe, I want to say starting age is 5, but I could be wrong on that. I told her that I was Jewish and my husband was Catholic. She told me about COD. Now, COD has 2 abbreviations. So if you know either one, okay. So not what COD means here, but one of the abbreviations it stands for is for the Center on Deafness, which is housed in Northbrook, and that building is part of ISRC. And the other abbreviation, which what it stands for here, is Catholic Office of the Deaf. And I believe they're out of Holy Trinity, but I could be wrong. Father Joe is the father out there, and they have services in ASL. And CBS, and we're not talking TV here. Anyone know what CBS stands for? Okay, and that would be the Jewish piece of things. That would be Congregation B'nai Shalom, and I believe they're in the Northbrook area. I told her that I wanted some written information about all of this, and she told me about the Choices Binder, which I should have changed to Notebook, and when I asked to talk to another parent, she told me about GBYS. So the Choices Notebook, does have all these acronyms in them. They also have the resource listing at the back that has the name and contact number and information for all of these organizations. And if you don't have the copy that just was released late this, I want to say October, November, I can get one to you, and if I don't see you before training, you'll get one at training. right. When I first got matched with my PG, what does PG stand for? Eva?
Parent guide. Woo, woo.
Very good. I asked about this whole system that got started nationally and in Illinois. She told me about the CDC. Anyone? Centers for Disease Control, NCHAM, assuming that you guys don't know that one, National Center on Hearing Assessment Management, and HRSA, Health Resources and Services Administration. So essentially these are the main groups. I believe they're all federally funded that really follow through, again, with newborn hearing screening and our national EDDI conference that we're going to be attending in Kentucky, our EDDI programs, which then support us in our state. They're the ones that fund our program through grants, and that grant is funneled to EDDI and public health, and then they write a contract with us. So that's how they all come into play. And as far as Guide by Your Side, from outreach, you guys know it started in Wisconsin in 2004 and then was taken on by Hands and Voices headquarters and has been implemented across the nation now. I asked if there were group events for families who have children with hearing loss, and she told me about IL, H&V, which we have already gone over, Illinois Hands and Voices. During my first session with a deaf mentor, I learned about growing up deaf and IAD. What is IAD? Illinois Association for the Deaf. I asked about sign language interpreters, and she told me about IDHHC. Illinois Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission. Does anyone know where the Illinois Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission is housed? Which part of the state? They're housed in Springfield. It is a government agency. And I believe they moved since last time I was down there. But if you were ever interested in being part of their board, you could apply to be voted into the board, and I think it might be a couple of years commitment. And then I believe they have quarterly meetings in Springfield. You can Google them, and it will pull up their website, and I believe all their meetings are taped, so you could watch them as well. She also said that if we were signing to her, we should learn about her rights under ADA. What does ADA stand for? Eva.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
Correct. And so, again, when is it appropriate to request a sign language interpreter and so forth? That is what protects our kids who use sign language. She told me about CHS, CARES, DCI, and CART. Let's start with the first one, CHS. Eva?
Chicago Hearing Society.
Correct. CARES. Okay. Chicago Area Interpreter Referral Service. DCI. Deaf Communications by Innovation, and CART. That would be computer-aided real-time captioning. Have any of you used CART before or have seen CART? So essentially, especially at EDDI, the EDDI conference in Kentucky. Sometimes in sessions they will have CART happening with or without an interpreter. So CART, and they do remote CART, which is pretty interesting. CART is basically captioning. So, you know, just as you can turn on captioning on your TV, what this does is whoever's speaking, there's typically somebody in the room that would type, and it's very much like a court reporter that would type, and then it would get projected onto a screen and create a captioning tour of the event. And sometimes CART is also used in college. But we use CART during Mom's Night In, during our panel, and that is really interesting. And I like it because, you know, then if you miss anything, you can kind of look at the screen and see what you missed. But remote CART, what they do is so the person that is speaking wears a microphone, or there's a microphone close to that person, and then the person that is captioning is not on location. They could be in their house, in their jammies, listening to what you say and then typing it, and then it gets put up on the screen. CHS, CARES, and DCI, they're all interpreter referral services. So if you're ever looking for an interpreter, they would be the ones that you could contact and request one. Any questions? Eva, I saw your hand go up, so I don't know if you're just really excited about EFE.
No. So is that similar to what, like, you can use at movie theaters, where you get, like, that device that kind of clicks onto your seat and the closed captioning, the words are there?
Right, but because that movie's already captioned, that's how it gets put up on your screen. It's not somebody actually typing it in and as it happens.
Okay.
So, yeah, we tried the captioning at the movie theaters with my son, and the one that they had this clunky thing that kind of rests in your cup holder, which then what do you do with your cup, right, because it's using up your cup holder.
Right.
And it has like this bendable screen that wings out in front of you so you can read kind of while you watch. Yeah, and he was like, yeah, I don't think so. And ever since then, he's never wanted to try them again. And I've never found an open captioned movie at a time that we'd want to go in a location that we would actually be typically going to. All right, hold on, let me grab a quick drink here. All right, so, and then she told me about EFE. Anyone? So EFE is Equip for Equality, and they are, I believe, nonprofit, and they offer legal advice and assistance, and MCLD. Anyone for MCLD? Melinda?
Yes, the Midwest Center on Law for the Deaf.
Correct. And Midwest Center for Law and the Deaf, it's, I mean, really, if you're really needing help, you've tried many avenues and you're still stumped, that would be when you'd reach out to them. My deaf mentor told me that if I was going to learn sign language that I had to practice. I thought it would be nice to get tapes to help us, and she mentioned the IDHHC and ISRC libraries, which we've already gone over. Illinois Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission and Illinois Service Resource Center, they both have lending libraries. I don't know about how the commissions work, but I know that ISRC sends it out to you absolutely free with a postage paid envelope to send it right back in. So there's no cost at all to the families. And they have more than just ASL resources. They have many, many books, behavior, ADHD, pretty much you name it, they've got it. I think they even have games. You can even go to their location and look in the library yourself. So many options. She also mentioned to see when there would be an ASL group event hosted by Carter. Carter's pretty new, so I don't know if you guys know it. Anyone? It was started by a mom, Christine, who has a son named Carter, and she wanted to have more opportunities for her family to practice sign language and for them to be in an environment of sign language. And so she started this nonprofit organization named Carter, which stands for Creating ASL Resources to Enhance Relationships. So how pretty groovy there that she was able to turn her son's name into the acronym of her nonprofit that she started. Because I also speak Spanish, she told me that I am able to contact Choices and register for one of their sign language classes taught in Spanish, and also to connect with IDLA. Anyone? IDLA? Illinois Deaf Latino Association. I realize, though, that I can learn a lot and maybe get involved. There is always the option of joining the LIC. Anyone? Local Interagency Council. They are groups through the CFC offices, and I believe, I have never participated in one, but I believe it's professionals and families from that CFC office that get together and coordinate events and have meetings and so forth. Or even the collaborative that is working on quality improvement through the NicheQ. Yeah, I know you're all itching to tell me what NicheQ means. Yeah, I thought so. National Initiative for Children's Healthcare Quality. So that is a global program. They had a work group several years back and that our state participated in, specifically focusing on hearing loss and improving systems for children with hearing loss. So I actually participated on the state group and on the national group. But that was several years ago. But if you ever hear the terms quality improvement, small tests of change, and so forth, that's where this all came from, and that's why our state utilizes those terms and that mindset. As you know, this is a lot of information and can be truly overwhelming. I'm fortunate, though, that I have a wonderful support system in place. If I forget any of this information, I am always able to ask someone or look up the information in my notebook. My parent guide is always there for me, which is a huge relief. Any questions? You'll be happy to know that I have a little cheat sheet of all the acronyms that were used tonight that I will forward on to you after our chat now, so that you can keep that on hand. Like I said, it's also in the notebook. A lot of them out there. There probably are some that we don't know and new ones that might pop up, but I hope you all learned something tonight. So let's move on then to number 1. If you wanted to find sign language videos, books, tapes, or DVDs, where would you go? A, ISRC, B, IDHHC, C, the local bookstore or library, or D, all of the above. Question 2. What's the main difference between an IFSP and an IEP? A, there are 4 letters in IFSP and 3 in IEP. B, an IFSP is used for children birth to 3 and an IEP is for children over 3. C, an IEP is used for children ages birth to 3 and an IFSP is used for children 3 and older. Or D, an IEP is family-centered and an IFSP is centered only on the child. All right, question 3. Choices stands for communication, hearing loss, options, independence, cochlear implants, emotions, and sign language. True or false? Wonderful. Number 4. Name 2 laws that are related to hearing loss. A, EDDI and UNHS. B, IDEA and ADA. C, EDHI and ADA. Or D, Rehab Act and Contract Law. All right, and question 5. A parent would want a DTH for their child with hearing loss instead of a DT. True or false? All right, nice job. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.